Martin George. Martin, I'm sure you got a
Thank
chance to
you.
look at what happened today, or for a couple hours or so, as most people glued to their TVs.
Sorry, Jerry, I didn't see any of it at all. But the point is, I have seen some of the reports as to what may have transpired. But, my point is, Jerry, you see what happens when you give politicians 1 minute to talk. You notice the two of them who went on quite a bit. But the idea is, when you look at what transpired today, it seems to have been a continuation of the grandstanding and the politicking and the partisanship which we have come to recognize most of our political leaders for. There doesn't seem to be any genuine rapprochement on either side to say, well, look, let's put aside our differences, bury the hatchet, and let's try to see what is the best outcome for the people of Tobago. And that brings us to the next question. What is it that the people of Tobago want? Because Jerry, I am not sure. The thing is, you hear from Vanas, and I mean Vanas is an experienced person, somebody who's been on the ground, and it seems clear that Vanas's position is that look, these bills are not representative of the will of the people. Then you hear Kwesi, who seems to say, well, look, hey, let's at least move forward with these because it's the best thing on the table at this point. And, I mean, Denise is a bit ambivalent about it. But the question is, what do the people of Tobago really want? And what is the long-term game plan? In other words, where do they want to go with this? Do you simply want this as a window dressing to say, well, yes, that you could beat your chest and say, I have power, like Toussaint Louverture did, several years ago in Haiti. And, he said, well, okay, look, we have freedom now. And then you ask yourself, well, what are you doing with it? Is it going to be a scenario like a dog chasing after a car? And when he catches the car, he doesn't have a clue what he does with it. What do the people of Tobago want? And I think that's the fundamental really need to assess and ascertain. And I'll tell you this, Jerry, we don't want it just from the older heads who have been, crying in the wilderness for 40 years, so to speak. I saw somebody saying that, we've been waiting in the desert for 40 years. I would also like to hear from the young people of Tobago. What do the young people want? Do the young people even have an interest in this? What are the teenagers, those who are in their 20s? What are their views on these matters? And that, I think, is what should really be guiding the discussion rather than just thinking, well, okay, you have both political parties fighting it out, duking it out, and of course they both have an eye on the THA election that is supposed to come again, and each one wants to ensure that they have the one-upmanship to make sure that the other one doesn't look good. So therefore, I am going to try to score political points against you. You're going to try to score political points against me, and that's all it is. It ends up being a grand charade. So therefore, you ask yourself, what is the long-term game plan here, and what is it
All
the
right.
people of Tobago really want? I think those are the two
All right.
fundamental questions.
All right.
You
I'm surprised
accuse
that
the
somebody
Supreme
like you,
politicians from
who've
going
been part of
over.
this process for so long, you asking what Tobago people want at this stage where the thing reached Parliament. I'm surprised at you, Martin, but however, that is your point of view. We'll get into more details and make me understand it a little better as you move on. But Vanas, I mean, what really happened today, in your view? I mean, there was your name was even called, so your name was recorded in Hansard. I'm not too sure in a very polite and professional way, but I mean, in real political grandstanding, where your name was mentioned, but you, of course, are one of the major contributors to the desire for moving forward with some constitutional amendment and some position for Tobago. But are you satisfied with the way in which this thing was approached in the first place? Are you happy that, are you seeing that both sides, the opposition and the government, was putting politics before Tobago's interests?
No, I think the minority report got to the a substantial part of what's at stake here. The procedures that the GSC adopted coming to Tobago in what was substantially a charade, to use Martin's term, and go to the people, bypassing the assembly, so to say, which is fundamentally the elected set of representatives we have here, and not giving them a chance to call the people of Tobago together and hear from us what we think. That bypassing betrays the fundamentals underlying this bill. The 2016 bills was sent by the Orville London Assembly, so to say. And I think the appropriate approach that should have been adopted was to come back via the Assembly and engage the people of Tobago again to hear what we think. That's the first point. Secondly, I want to make the point, Jerry, that I am happy that the opposition had cause to walk out, because I think it's a sign that they're not happy with the bills. The minority report signaled that they're not happy with the bills. I think that's the right answer. These bills are hard to rescue. And speaking from the perspective of a person who studies every day how the country should develop, not merely Tobago, but the country, the importance of the national interest and the interests of Tobago within the national interest. I think these bills are bad for democracy and they're bad for development. And I think the best decision for the opposition is to block the Constitution Bill. Now, once the Constitution Bill is blocked, from my reading of the Tobago Bill, the Tobago Island Government Bill, the government loses its power to use the constitutional provisions in the amendments to control effective lawmaking in Tobago. And therefore, I don't know that the government will have the basis, the platform on which to prosecute its agenda with the Tobago Island Government Bill. So I'm happy that the opposition is poised to block the constitutional amendment bill in the national interest.
So Vanos, you really feel, after all these years, after all this consultation, you happy with the position that the opposition took to block this bill at this stage?
I am, quite bluntly. And I think the real point is, if you're doing something for the country, you have to do the right thing. You can't be doing the wrong thing and saying to the people, well, take half a loaf, get started, all of that sort of stuff. This is 2021. What's at stake are two critical issues: democracy for the country and democracy for Tobago, and the use of that democracy to drive the development process in Trinidad and Tobago through what we can do in Tobago to diversify the economy. And when you look at it through those lenses, these bills are so bad that I can't see even any way to rescue them. I can make proposals about what's missing in the bills, and we can get to that later. But given what is before the House now, these bills ought to be fundamentally voted down. Both of them, but of course, it's the Constitutional Amendment Bill that the opposition will have clout to block.
Yeah, but you are saying that you're happy that the government blocked, that the opposition blocked the bill, and the opposition really have not looked at one particular or two clauses in the whole two bills to say you're not happy with this particular clause or you're not happy with this particular section. They just seem not to want to vote on it, as some people predicted, as Kwesi predicted many years ago. You know, but Kwesi, you're not really surprised by this position taken?
To be honest,
And do you think that there should
Jerry,
be more
well,
maturity on both sides?
and you know, because Vanna spoke about being very blunt, and I think if I have to be the most blunt, because everyone says, you know, Kwesi, you're so politically correct all the time, but I feel somehow we need to retire to a rum shop where we could use some construction strength language and really get to the bottom of this. The reality is, if you were to go through the over 100 autonomous island states throughout the world, you will not find one cut and dry model that fits everybody. Everyone has their own model. As a matter of fact, in the United Kingdom, we just saw in the European Championships, England played against Scotland in the European Championships in football. We haven't even had that discussion yet about having our own representative teams, whether it's football or the Olympics and so on, coming out of Tobago. We haven't had that discussion. What we are having a discussion is, and obviously it means then, is either we go from a state of quote unquote dependency to the other absolute, which is in independence. So if it is Vanas and the PDP saying that, fine, push independence. In the other instance, autonomy is on a spectrum, and we can sit here and argue about the bill's perfection or imperfection. I think simply we have to look at two things. One, and I mean, Martin did speak to what the people of Tobago want. And there were 6 areas, as I recall, and I'm sure Vanas recalls very clearly because he has that kind of brain matter. There are 6 areas that the people of Tobago indicated that they want as a key outcome to this entire process. We wanted equality of status. We want lawmaking powers, self-determination, greater participatory governance, equality of opportunities, and greater fiscal independence. Those 6 areas were the key outcomes of the bill. And if you were to ask even the 6 persons in this program now, what does your dream home or house look like? Everyone would have a different idea. And if you were to ask every Tobagoan and open the discussion to every Tobagoan again, they will have a different idea of what autonomy looks or sounds like. But the key things are these 6 outcomes, and we have to ask ourselves, do the bills presented afford us these 6 outcomes? And the simple response is yes. The other question that we have to ask is, we are now operating 25 years later with the Act 40 of 1996. Is this bill, or these bills as presented, putting Tobago in a better position than Act 40 of 1996? Similar, Act 40 of 1996 was better than Act 37 of 1980. And so we can argue all of those things, but the reality is there's no way that law is perfect. Democracies evolve constantly. If you would have told me 10 or 20 years ago that marijuana would have been decriminalized when I was in high school, was one of the most taboo things when you talk about marijuana, I would not have believed you. But the fact is, democracies are evolving the world over. In many places, gay marriages are legal now, and there are all types of discussions for things that we thought were impossible 10 or 20 years ago or generations ago that are now in democratic discussions now. And we are seeing different places speaking to that. So my thing is, just as democracies evolve, autonomies will evolve as well. So we have 2 fundamental things. One, those 6 key outcomes that I mentioned, do the bills achieve those 6 things? And 2, are we going to be better off than we are with Act 40 of 1996? The response to both is a very clear and vociferous yes. And am I surprised that the opposition has taken this approach? Vanas is speaking about the minority report. The minority report speaks to one thing only: further consultations. I don't know that elucidates any grand point to really stop or stall or even move the discussion forward in any way. And I don't know that. And again, we also have to be careful about what we say, because look at how easily people are being quoted or misquoted. As a matter of fact, I heard that Brother B had to send a response to what the member Rudy Indar Singh had to say yesterday. So it means that the opposition is using some of the quotes or the espousing of some of the people from Tobago as their backing to not support the bill, or as an excuse to not support the bill. But if we were to start consultations again, I can guarantee you, we have many intelligent young people. I'm speaking to people in the Youth League, in the PNM as we speak, and they have so much questions and ideas. We will continue with the kind of great minds we have in Tobago. We can easily have another 10 or 20 years of consultation before we get to this place where there's a bill on the floor of the parliament again.
All right, Denise, we want your take on that one. You think we really should be happy
I think
about
we need to
this?
go back into history a little bit, and just to address Martin there for a bit. We cannot forget that extensive consultations were done across the island. You first had the John Prince Committee, and you then had the platform of the Tobago political parties. Initially, we had an assembly bill that was presented to the PP government back then, and that bill was taken and they created their own version of what it should be. That bill was then rejected, and the PNM went across the island with a petition stating what they wanted. Okay, and it was way more than we have now. The Tobago, the Tobago political platform, or platform of political parties, hosted a series of consultations across the island. And I remember walking into the Signal Hill Comprehensive School, September 14th, 2014, and seeing the number of Tobagonians who came forward to be a part of that signing. It was over 500 Tobagonians. To date, we have not had such an extensive buy-in from Tobagonians around the issue. And they had 11 things, not 6 things, but 11. Yes? And that included that we should have the fundamental right to democratic self-government for Tobago, and responsibility for the administration in Tobago to formulate and implement policy on all matters affecting the lives of people resident in Tobago, save for 11 areas which would be the responsibility of the government. Equality of status between the two islands, and a constitutional, legislative, and administrative framework reflecting such equality. A federal type system of governance, delineation of the boundaries of each island, jurisdiction and control over our economic resources in Tobago, in Tobago's defined economic space, freedom for the Tobago administration to make laws to govern Tobago, ability to fund Tobago's development through borrowing, authority and responsibility in the Tobago administration to formulate and implement fiscal policy, including taxation measures, removal of cabinet dominance, and override of decisions made in Tobago by the Tobago administration. A legal framework providing for the wide participation of society in the decision-making process of the Tobago administration, and management and control of the inter-island transport systems to reside in Tobago. This was then translated into bills that were sent down to Trinidad. I think those bills have basically been ignored because we ask ourselves, and I remember this was one of the key issues, but when you 75(1)(b) put back in there and further even explained more and applies to just about every area. We have exclusive administrative jurisdiction, but we have 75(1)(b). We have lawmaking powers, but we have 75(1)(b). We have the Fiscal Review Commission. We had to beg for the DRC to be put back in. We realized that the DRC has been put back in. The Dispute Resolution Commission is put back in. But whereas you had the commission giving a report jointly to both the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary, indicating that there was equality, right now you have that being presented to the Prime Minister, who then makes the ultimate decision. And if we have a problem with it, you have to go to the High Court. So we have to ask ourselves, what Tobagonians have laid out. We know at least 500 persons have signed it, as opposed to 197 persons who participated just recently. At least we know we have 500 people representing, at least 500 families in Tobago. And that is what they signed off on. We have to ask ourselves, have these bills come close? Have they gotten to 50% of what the people want? Have they gotten to 25% or 75%? Are the people willing to say, okay, well, they seem to have gotten to 50, 60%. Maybe we'll accept it. or maybe it is 25%. And I think this is where we need to make our analysis. And it is not looking good when we look at all of the things that Tobagonians said they wanted emphatically back then. They walked. There are people who walked the whole island in Tobago getting petitions signed. I know Dr. Vanna signed one of those petitions back then. Okay,
Yeah.
perhaps all of you did, in terms of, and this is where we have to say we continue to be the political football of every administration, the carrot that is never delivered to us, and depending on what party you have here and what party you have in Tobago, whatever is given is rejected, and we are not getting the best for ourselves. As Tobagonians, we need to understand the only way we are going to get self government for ourselves, self governance, is when we are able to come together, take off the party hats, come together, and look at it from a Tobago point of view.
Yeah, and that is what I admire about the consultations we had in the past, where people from all different backgrounds, political and otherwise, were part of most of those consultations, especially one in
And those
Just on a
Singapore.
point of
consultations were also
clarity,
held in Trinidad.
Yeah. But
just
Martin,
on a
I
point of
mean,
clarity, if I may,
Martin, you
Jerry.
have been, normally I know you to be a very strategic person and measured with your approach to doing different things. I mean, personally and professionally. But do you think the approach or the strategy used by the government to bring this bill in the form that it is, and to have the opposition, many people like Kwesi, the chairman from the PNM, have been predicting for a long time that the opposition is going to support this thing. You satisfied with the approach, having an idea that the opposition is unlikely to support this thing? You happy with the approach? Look what happened with the Democrats and the Republicans. They have to come together at critical times to make something happen. They don't just stay there and quarrel it out and let the thing end up in a deadlock or a stalemate. Why we can't use that, take off the political hat, just like what Denise alluded to a while ago? Are you satisfied with this approach to get success, or this is just a charade?
Well, the thing is, that's the word I used earlier, Jerry, and that's exactly what it is. So it's not a question of whether I'm satisfied or not. It's what the politicians are seeking to do. And each side is clearly looking to gain points and score political points. Remember, this is going to be the main talking point in the next round of Tobago House of Assembly elections, whenever that is. So it's going to be a question of, okay, this side supported the bill, the other side didn't support the bill. One side will say, well, we love Tobago more, the other side doesn't love Tobago. And that's really what it is. And that's why I keep asking the question. And, I just find it so fascinating and amusing, Jerry, because Tobagonians keep going around in circles, 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 and they are always so fired up and passionate about this issue that I just find it remarkable. Because the politicians use that energy and they use that fire, but they use it for their own ends to play their game. And, it's exactly the scenario where when one party is in power, they claim to champion the cause of Tobago and they want to push through a bill such as this in whatever format, because Chris is quite correct, there's no perfect bill at the end of the day, right? And that's the purpose of law and legislation. It's a living, breathing, growing thing that develops along the way, right? But the idea is that they always play this type of game, and Tobagonians are willing pawns in this process every time. And I just find it so fascinating that they subject themselves willingly to this type of political abuse, because it is clear that once one party is in power, they will then say, well, we want to push this bill because we are interested in the good of Tobago, because what they want really is the bragging rights. It's not really any deep and abiding, genuine love or interest for Tobago, because I think if you were to examine it from that perspective, you'd find both parties wanting in that regard. But it is a very good tool politically for them to be able to say, well, listen, I tried to push through this bill for the good of Tobago, and the other side didn't want it. But then when the other side is in government, they do the same thing, and then the same party that claimed to have loved Tobago and claimed to have wanted, the best for Tobago, they're the ones who will be opposing and saying, well, we can't support it. And they'll be given all the same reasons that Kwesi finds objectionable now. If you look back in history, and I mean, Denise was quite correct to allude to history, the history in Parliament shows that, look, there were times when the PNM basically adopted a similar type of position as what the opposition is adopting today. So, it's like the Bible says, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And neither of them is without sin in this scenario, Jerry. And Tobagonians need to understand that this type of thing is going to continue as long as they allow it to. So that's why I keep positing the question, Jerry, what is it that Tobagonians want? And it's not a question in a vacuum or something that I'm asking just for in a rhetorical sense. In a very real sense, because we have at present a scenario where you have 6-6. So in other words, in the assembly, you have half, the house is divided in half. Now, the point is you cannot discount 1-6 to say 1-6 is more important than the other 6 or 1-6 is bigger or smaller. So therefore, if it is that you see clearly those on the side of the PDP are saying that they are not supporting this bill, it doesn't represent what their supporters want or their followers want, then that's something, to my mind, that I don't think anybody could discount and say, well, look, their views are not relevant, because at the end of the day, they have won basically half of the seats in the assembly as it stands now. So if there is not that buy-in, then there's something fundamentally wrong either with what they are telling us, and it could very well be that, or there's something fundamentally wrong with the political system that we were using to try to achieve this, and the fact that Tobagonians are allowing the political leaders to carry them along this path, which basically leads them around the mulberry bush. That's where we've been going. We've been going around and around in circles, and the politicians love it. I mean, we have politicians in the panel tonight, and they know what they are about. They know how they, go about this thing. So therefore, Jerry, in terms of your question as to, the comparison with other countries where you may find that, as I said, that rapprochement and that, coming together for what is the greater good, that does not appear to be the approach that our politicians have taken. And the thing is, persons get so entrenched in their support and their passion for their political parties that they can't see the wood for the trees. So therefore, they just are blinded by the color. Like, for instance, I see that lovely yellow color of your shirt, but I know there's no political significance attached to that. But the point is, people, they only see yellow and red in these issues. And that's the problem. And that's the fundamental problem we have with that and Tobago.
Yeah. All right. We go for a quick break, and when we come back, we look at what is likely to happen at the committee stages, whether it's making sense or not. When you come back from the break.
Who say you had to go to town to get the best in wholesale prices? Check out Goldsboro Minimart today for the best in wholesale and retail prices. We have Coca-Cola, Smalta, Malta, juice, 10 kg powder soap, 5 liter dishwasher liquid, 5 liter fabric softener, detergents, and so much more. And newly added to our shelves, genuine parts for trucks and pickups. Mitsubishi, Kia, Hyundai, Nissan, and Isuzu. Check Goldsboro Minimart, located Goldsboro Main Road, conveniently open Sunday to Friday, 7 a.m. to sunset. Contact us today at 660-4095.
Off with our topic Governing with Restraint, 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. Catch us live on Tobago Channel 5, TTT, Pulse 89.5 FM, Radio Tambourine 92.7 FM, Street 919 FM, and Office of the Chief Secretary and Tobago Channel 5 Facebook pages. Send your questions to 688-4040 or email us at mainfo@tha.gov.tt. That's mainfo@tha.gov.tt. Tobago Matters. Be a part of the discussion.
When you need electronics, find what you want quickly at Ted Electronics. We have tons of brand name items in smartphones, tablets, LCD and smart TVs, headphones and speakers. For the best in electronics, check TED. Amazing service and the lowest prices guaranteed. Located upstairs Moosehead Plaza, Bethany Road, Tobago. TED Electronics, your ideal choice for electronics.
I have been a practicing attorney for almost 35 years. So I bring that experience not only dealing with people, but with organizations and institutions. That degree of involvement and participation has allowed me, hopefully, to have a balanced disposition in dealing with issues. We do have fun during the program, especially at times when we are off camera and interesting comments are made. And being on High Five Reloaded allows me to contribute to the evolution of the process of thinking, the way we think as a people.
High Five Reloaded with Christo Gift, opening the eyes of the public every Monday night at 8 p.m. only on Tobago Channel 5.
Be viewing Tobago Channel 5 for the live broadcast of the Tobago Methodist Circuit starting from this Sunday and every Sunday at 9 a.m. as they bring God into our homes.
Rise and shine in the morning is just part of my day.
From 6:30 to 8:30 every day. Foreign man says so.
It informs me of what happens in Tobago. I find it to be so informative. Every aspect of Tobago affairs is being discussed there. So I will continue to look at Rise and Shine. That's my thing.
Monday to Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m.
I love Rise and Shine.
Yeah, okay, folks, we back and welcome back, everybody. And of course, we want to look, panelists, we want to look at what is likely to come out of the committee stage where they are right now. It went to the House, I think they voted on it twice, or second reading, and now they're going to what you call the open house, not the open house, the complete house. And of course, the opposition walked out, and apparently, former the opposition leader, Ms. Prasad Bisesa, apparently wanted to speak, and apparently she walked out. There's all this political meandering and juxtaposing and grandstanding that is taking place with a serious matter like this. You all don't know how embarrassed I am to see people on both sides who I know quite well. In the THA, I know these people quite well. In the government, I know these people quite well. In the opposition, I know these people quite well. You don't know how embarrassed I feel to see what's supposed to be mature, politically bright, intelligent people operating like boys and girls. You know, just putting Tobago first, putting their own interests first, and so on. No strategy adopted to deal with this thing by the government. Knowing how the opposition will approach the thing. You have a debate and you're just chastising everybody on the opposition like that. I mean, and the other people, and you want these people to get the vote. It's like if you're just setting up the Tobago population, and this is what I don't like, you know. So anyway, Vanas, I want you to just maybe suggest what is likely to come out of this situation when they go to committee stage, when they're at committee stage right now.
Well, I don't see much that the government will allow to change because the structure of the bills tell you what the government's intent is. Its intent through the business of the provision of lawmaking powers is to use the Constitution to control the substance of any bill, any law that the Tobago House of Assembly should pass. It has in the Schedule 2, 23 areas over which Tobago should be able to make law, but 17 of those areas are areas in which it can make overriding law, fundamentally. And then the other 6 areas it can make law under the national security and financial emergency justifications to override them. So fundamentally, what you have in hand here is a mechanism in the Constitution that the government wants to be able to control any lawmaking, any exercise of the lawmaking powers that are assigned to the THA. And as long as that is not available to them, because I think the opposition will not agree to that approach, the government will stymie this thing. So in principle, I don't think much change will be allowed at the committee stage or any other stage going forward with these bills, because the intent of the government is to control Tobago. Indeed, I would put it more strongly. The intent of the government in Trinidad, and in particular the PNM, is to colonize Tobago. And because of that, if these provisions are allowed to change, that intent will not be realized. And therefore, I think not much will come out of what you call in the committee stage and so on. I think the opposition, in the end, will stay true to the signals they are giving so far and not allow these very bad bills to pass. At least the constitutional amendment bill. I think that should not be allowed to pass at all. I think it's doing three things badly. It's restraining Tobago lawmaking powers without Tobago having any say in the way the restraint is exercised by the parliament in Trinidad. It's doing a bad service to the country by the way financing is arranged for Tobago. It's unfair to Trinidad, and it's giving the wrong answer to the right intent. So you're then doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, so you see, honestly, Vanos, all the new or pretty interesting provisions, some of them, you see that as a move to really colonize Tobago?
Yes, I think
these provisions here, you may not be satisfied with all, but all of them, you really feel that is an attempt to colonize Tobago?
Yeah, in the structure that you have there, not an attempt. What these bills provide for is a systematic capability on the part of the parliament in Trinidad to override lawmaking in Tobago and control lawmaking, and to make laws on simple matters like community development that Tobagonians must obey, even though those are so critical to our development. And I think in general, what these bills amount to is a legal colonization of Tobago, moving us backwards from the status of a ward and providing two bills that are worse than the 1996 bill, by far.
All right.
By far.
Okay.
Because at least legally, we will now be asked to agree to our domination in law.
Kwesi, tell me how colonization look in all this approach, boy. I really want to know.
Well, the last time I sat on a panel with Vanos, I recognized that mathematical economics may be a strong point, but the interpretation of law is totally leave up to Martin George. Because I recall he was trying to espouse at that time that based on his reading of the THA Act, that Farley should be made the Chief Secretary at this point in time. And that was his interpretation. Based on what he's saying here again tonight, I'm not surprised. So he's basically consistently incorrect on his interpretation of the law. Schedule 2 actually speaks to, and I guess it's his responsibility to spread the gospel of the PDP. But Schedule 2 says specifically, I'm reading here from the law, the list of matters for which the Tobago legislature shall have exclusive lawmaking powers in Tobago. And I suppose when Martin speaks later, he could speak to what exclusive lawmaking powers mean. I think what was clear in the debate and even in the legislation is that the intent is that the Tobago Island government can make laws for these 24 areas, not 23, 24 areas, but fundamentally not be able to amend the constitution in any way, or because that remains the right of parliament. And okay, you could argue then that you want to be able to amend the constitution, but as of now, we are still the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And according to the constitution, the highest lawmaking body is still the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, I don't know this the colonized. I guess I see some people commenting about the colonizing of Tobago by Trinidad in the Facebook comments. So I guess it works for the PDP Facebook shows and so on. But if we really want to have an intelligent discussion, I think we have to move forward and understand what really are what are the bills truly and truly proposing. And if anyone really wants to say or listen to the comparison and an intellectual or a legal comparison of the bills from 7 a.m. in the morning on Rise and Shine Tobago Channel 5. The Attorney General, we will be replaying the Attorney General's submission to the debate so that people can hear very clearly the comparison almost clause by clause of the new bills, the proposed bills, and even the THA, the current Act 40 of 1996. So I really don't want to get into what Vanessa is speaking about colonizing, because I think that's irrelevant in this discussion right now. What we see happening next is the committee stage. I heard probably one or two recommendations from the PNM side for possible changes to what was recommended by the Joint Select Committee. And I think one of the key things that, and I heard Dr. Remy speaking to it, and she sounded so pained and hurt that persons like Dr. James and other are calling this thing a PNM bill, when in fact it was the work of a Joint Select Committee of Parliament, which Dr. Remy was a member of, the same Dr. Remy that PDP members praised when she shut down certain things and she criticized certain things, the THA Amendment Bill in particular. She was a part of this. She, as well as two other independent members of Parliament, of the Senate, were a part of this Joint Select Committee. Members of the UNC, members of the PNM were all on the Joint Select Committee. So it's not a PNM bill. I'm not getting into that PNM colonization. The intent of Parliament is to make good law. And the PNM is not going to be in power forever. We've seen that already. The UNC has been in power before. The NAR has been in power before. So it can't be that anybody can say the PNM is making laws for PNM. And I think that is the furthest thing from the truth. What we are looking at fundamentally is moving this discussion of internal self-government forward for the people of Tobago. And I really want to indicate that it's extremely disappointing to me, generally speaking, that we are allowing parties and politics, and you heard it in the debate from the time, because the first presenter, the mover of the motion, was the member for Aruka Maloney, the leader of government business. She spoke to the process that the Joint Select Committee took up. Rudy Indar Singh, when he came on board, he started immediately talking about the end of Keith Rowley's reign, and when this bill fails, what it will mean, and they will lose the elections in Tobago.
All right, I was just hoping that. Yeah, I was just hoping that we get something. What is likely to happen at the committee stages?
No, I'm saying so. Again, so at the committee stage, again, there's going to be a vote clause by clause. But as you said, Jerry, and Vanessa alluded to it, as long as the opposition keeps to the word that they're not supporting the bill, the constitutional amendment bill will fail. And the constitutional amendment bill gives legs to the island government bill. So it will not make sense to proceed with the island government bill. So as long as it's not at the committee stage, what is going to happen is what at the end of the committee stage, that voting, what is going to happen. And we'll see that more than likely the UNC will stick to their guns and jettison the bill. It will be a filibuster move.
All right, Denise, what do you expect to happen at committee stages? And I want you to I don't know how much time we have. Maybe you could look at the way forward out of this whole crisis that we find ourselves in.
Well, I think from what we saw today, and as some of the panelists put in, the grand standing between both sides, we could see that if it is one thing they're united out, it's not given to legal success. I go back to the fact that to the People's Partnership Government, and those bills were not accepted the same that they were sent and changed drastically. And then they were to be. Now we sent consultations across the island, sit down what the people of Avon, okay, debated in the chamber before it went down, did all of that. Again, it has been changed and it doesn't resemble close to what the people say they wanted. And I don't think that they have in giving us what we wanted. Again, but fact, only way Tobago is going to achieve the autonomy and Tobago to be on your stand shoulder to shoulder and message to the Trinidad government. I'm not the party now. I'm talking about the Trinidad government.
Yeah.
Government.
Right. Denise, let us come
When
back
they
to you.
send a message
We're
that
not hearing it
this
so
is
clearly. We'll come back to Denise in a bit. And let's go to Martin. Martin, I want you to be candid with me as usual. I know you like grandstanding as well. I know you just complain about politician grandstanding. But tell us, you think anything will come out at this committee stage? And what is really the way forward in your view to all of this?
All right. Well, Jerry, I mean, of course, we're going to see more shenanigans at the committee stage. And I think that's what the politicians want. And I say that with the greatest of deference to them as our political leaders. I think on both sides, that's what they want. They really just want this opportunity to basically play themselves on a stage and stand up on a soapbox and, preach and pontificate and, claim who loves Tobago more and who doesn't like Tobago and who has Tobago's interest, while they both are seeking their own political interests in at the end of the day. So there's nothing tangible or positive I see is going to come out of it. But the point is, there will be the bragging rights to say in relation to the THA election when it comes up. And that's what's at stake here, Jerry. We need to understand. You see, the thing is, we have to learn in life. Don't always look at what's in front of you. Look at the intention and look at what's the objective behind it. And really and truly, this is a play for the upcoming THA election. So that's really where it's at. So in other words, you would have one party being able to say, well, look, we tried for Tobago, we tried to give you what you wanted, but the thing is the other side, and of course they have always made the link as to, the opposition in Tobago and the opposition in Trinidad, and they will say, well, look, they are the ones who blocked it, but of course the opposition will then say, look, when the People's Partnership was in power, they had brought their bill to the parliament, and remember the PNM had blocked it. So it's that same kind of thing. I really see absolutely no way out of it in terms of that type of political football that they've made of Tobago in that sense, which is why I started on the simple question, what do Tobagonians want? Because you see, Jerry, that's where it is at for me. Because as far as I'm concerned, I would not even be worrying about these issues if I were, to advise Tobagonians. I would say, listen, forget about the politicians. Let them continue their silly games because they've been doing it for years. That's not going to change in a hurry. What Tobagonians need to do is to ensure that they start laying the foundations and the fundamentals for their own financial and economic independence. Because, Jerry, at the end of the day, once you have that, you don't need to worry anymore about what you're going to ask Trinidad to give you freedom or to give you a greater autonomy or whatever. Once you are able to be the master of your own destiny in terms of controlling your financial independence, your economic foundation, then you are in charge of your own destiny. I've used a very simple example, Jerry. I will use it again. When you are a young person living in your parents' house, you are under their control. They have to provide food, clothing, shelter, etc. When you grow up and you become a man, you own and you earn money. You are able to pay a rent or buy a car or buy a house. You don't need to go and ask your parents' permission to say, well, can I move out of home? Can I leave? No, you're a big man. You have that fundamental base in terms of your financial independence, and you are able to say, look, mom, dad, hey, I got a place, I'm moving out. I love you guys, I'll visit you, but I'm doing my own thing. And that's what Tobagonians need to focus on and stop getting caught up in this folly that the politicians lead them, through this, this minefield every 5 years or every 4 years. The point is they have to get out of that and say, listen, forget the politicians. I am going to see about my economic independence. I'm going to try to ensure that from a business perspective, and here I'm speaking in my role as the business chamber, the Tobago Business Chamber. We need to ensure that we encourage entrepreneurs. We need to look at things like solar projects to ensure that we have solar farms in Tobago, wind farms, the wind turbines. We need to harness the energy from the sea. These are the things that Tobagonians should really be focusing on. We need to look at developing a viable agro sector. Right? Tobago used to be the breadbasket feed in both Trinidad and Tobago. These are the things that we should be focusing on, and let the politicians continue their silly games and ensure that once we are able to manage our own affairs, manage our own economic affairs, then at that point you couldn't be bothered with what the politicians want to do, because you will make your own decisions. And that's why I keep asking Tobagonians the simple question: what do you want? Do you want a scenario where, say for instance, you let's assume, Jerry, worst case scenario or best case scenario, let's assume that one of these bills eventually gets passed with whatever support. Then, okay, what happens? When the budget comes along next year, when the budget comes along this year, when the budget comes along in the future, don't you still have to go back to Port of Spain with your begging bowl, asking for $3 billion or $4 billion, and then, when they give you whatever they feel is relevant, and then you come back and you smile, you put on a foolish grin, and you say, well, yes, I'm thankful, I'm grateful. We've seen the Secretary of Finance do this silly dance every year, and I'm grateful for what the central government has given me. Come on, that's the folly and the idiocy of what Tobagonians have allowed themselves to become. You've basically become a peasant class in that sense, because you have to keep going back to master every year asking for a handout. Like Oliver Smith, still can I have more, please? So therefore, that's why I ask the simple question, and it's really up to Tobagonians to decide, what do you want?
All right, that was pretty good.
Perhaps
Denise, I want to go back to you.
and
Yes, back to you,
yes.
Denise. And I want you to look at too, while you're making that comment, as presiding officer, what you think about the role of the president in this new arrangement. Maybe you could talk about that too.
Well, I mean, I want to address something that Martin has said first. The fact that, Tobago should go off and do all these things in terms of diversifying its economy. But in every private sector, in order to diversify, you need an investment to diversify. We have big companies that come into the country to do work. And they get concessions. These are companies that have money, but they get concessions. So when you're talking about Tobago must go off and do its thing to increase its economic growth, I hear you, but you still need a startup. Do you get a startup when you have to go to the minister every time to get a loan? And you don't even know whether that is going to be you're going to get permission to do it. When you start to earn some money, when you want to invest it, where do you have to take it? You have to take it back to Trinidad to invest. So these are the other areas where we speak to cabinet dominance.
If you want to invest money that you've earned in Tobago, you have to take it back.
Have you read the bills? Have you read the bills?
But my point, and that's
the bills speak to investment and going back to the central government. Anyway, so getting to the point of the president. Of course, the president has to be involved in terms of, assisting us with, laws are sent through the office of the presidency. But what I have serious concerns with, that for me came in like a thief in the night, is that when the bills were presented a month ago, there was this situation of a premier, and that the person, whatever they want to call it, would be an elected person from the assembly. It comes back, and the bill actually says that the chief secretary will be appointed by the president. So they have removed our democratic right within the assembly chamber to elect the chief secretary and the deputy chief secretary. That was not discussed. That is nowhere on what the people of Tobago say they wanted. So I don't know how that got in there. So that is my really comment in terms of the president's involvement. I mean, in terms
Just
of,
one point of
I
clarity
know
that
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 came
was
up in the
quite
final
puzzling to me as
consultation.
well, and I feel that is one of the recommendations or the amendment that is being recommended, but we'll see how that goes tomorrow. One of my
it's
sources was telling me.
ridiculous. How
But
could
I
you
don't want to
remove
leave out
that?
Vanas. I don't want to leave out Vanas because we have about 5 more minutes. Yeah, about 5 more minutes. And I want to get Vanas because you had to go wrong again, another wrongs for closing comments. Vanas, the way forward with respect to this situation that we find ourselves. What is the way forward? You're happy that the opposition are going to support the bill and so on. We have to stick with the 1996 bill, the current thing that we have now. You're satisfied with that?
No. We all understand the need to provide for self-determination and equality of status for Tobago. And we need that in the context of the country, because if the country is going to develop, it needs to develop through Tobago. That's the only real avenue that the nation has, and it needs to do the constitutional reform and do it properly. The problem we have here is that the constitutional reform being proposed by the PNM, and Kwesi may not want me to say so, contains some provisions. I know Martin would have read them. The proposed Section 53, subsections 4 to 7, contain provisions that allow the parliament in Trinidad, with their built-in majority of Trinidadians, to write laws overriding pretty much any law that the THA chooses to make. And as long as that is what Tobago is working with, it will not be able to be a critical instrument in the development and diversification of the national economy and the development of the Tobago economy. So I think we have to revisit that issue and fix it. And there are two ways to fix it. One way is to provide Tobago with a right of concurrence. So whenever they're making law in Trinidad, Tobagonians, through its government, gets to say, we agree or we don't agree. That will be one way. Another way is to reform the Senate and allow for elected members in the Senate, with giving Tobago equal numbers of representatives elected to the Senate as Trinidad. So Trinidad doesn't get to pass any bill that will effectively damage the interests of Tobago. Either of those two things would go a long way to achieving both self-determination and equality of status. I do not believe, on top of all of that, of course, you need to do the boundaries right in order to get fixed formulas into the Constitution that are appropriate to the challenge of development. These bills contain no boundaries for Tobago, really. No maritime boundaries for sure. So when you put all of those things together, I think where we ought to be going forward now is to set up the assembly with our 6-6 tie and give them the mandate to address this issue, starting from where the Joint Select Committee has left the matter. Following up on all that was done in 2016, 2018, and now get the people at Tobago involved, and over a 3-month or so period, come up with a bill that reflects what Martin is calling what Tobago people want. I think
suppose we come up with that bill thing. So let us assume you come up. Let us assume you come up with that bill, and the opposition said they're still ain't supporting it. What happens?
Well, when you finish doing what Tobago people want, you go to Trinidad and you lobby both the opposition and the PNM. You don't need to let this be led by Trinidadians. It should be led by the THA and the people of Tobago.
Yeah, Kwesi, you want to look at a way forward in all of this? I mean, I don't describe you as the CMN or the PNM, but at the same time, on a more serious note.
I think the fact that it's so easy to turn this into a PNM versus conversation should tell you all that is happening in the minds of some people and even in Parliament. We are sitting here. We are sitting here now, having what is supposed to be a conversation about moving forward, but it becomes almost we versus them. The reality is that has to drop, and whether it is with Martin's advising or not, because no matter what, people have their allegiances, yes, but the entire idea is that this bill moves Tobago forward, and we can all admit if we were to go and analyze this 96 versus this bill, Tobago will be better off. All of the things that we are speaking about, there are areas for investment. The 6 areas, because Denise spoke about 11 areas, by the time it got to it started out being Signal Hill, by the time it got to Lowlands, it was those 6 fundamental areas. The bill achieves all of those 6 fundamental areas under financial independence, the right to borrow, invest, work with the central bank. It's there. I don't know what Vanessa is talking about. Cabinet, parliamentary dominance. Actually, the bill addresses parliamentary dominance. As a matter of fact, it goes even further after we indicated the challenges we had to look at ensuring that even if a Tobago law is passed, if it conflicts with a law passed by Parliament, that they will ensure that the Tobago law, we find a way to ensure that Tobago law can still work by taking out anywhere that there is conflict. And again, we are still the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So if Vanas wants independence, again, say so. If the PDP wants, that's what Watson Luke has been saying, fine. If that's your feeling, fine. But don't confuse the autonomy discussion with independence ideas. Let us be very clear what autonomy is about. We still want to be part of the republic. We had dropped the discuss of federalism a long time ago as well. So we are moving forward as the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We, however, want to ensure that within the 11 miles, we can continue arguing about the amount of the maritime boundaries, but it's there. 11 miles is there, and we have the lawmaking power within that boundary. We have equality of status now. Tobago is no longer considered a ward of Trinidad, and things like even deeds and so on. So the reality is, Jerry, I just want to say that the bill is a good bill. It's not a perfect bill. It progresses Tobago. I do not expect, the fact that the opposition leader stayed away for most of the debate and tried to show up at the very end and get to speak says that she was not willing to hear anything else. She did not want to command her troops for the 2 days of the debate. So it tells you a lot about the positioning of the UNC, and I suppose the UNC and the PDP will continue to talk. And I hope that the PDP can tell them, listen, hey, let's move forward, and probably when next this comes up, then we can have another bite of the cherry.
Okay, quickly to Denise, do you think there's a need for an independent, may not be an independent senator, but an independent, apolitical person to intervene here and to see if they could put some sense in these people's head, to see if we could move along with something, get the parliament at this time to move the House of Representatives to move along and agree with something at this time, for God's sake and for the people of Tobago? You think it's necessary to have that? Some mediation from some apolitical person?
I think it's the extent of the mediation that would be needed. Because if we are looking at the bills, and take for instance, I think there are a lot of inconsistencies, to be frank. You're telling us that we're responsible for fisheries, but we cannot make law where fisheries, that department area is concerned. What if at some point Tobago finds that, the fishing for redfish, snapper, that they're getting smaller and smaller, and you wanted to put a law in terms of the size that could be caught or whether they have to throw it back in. You're telling us that we cannot do that. How come you're giving us administrative rights to oversee fisheries, but there's no legislative rights? So there are inconsistencies in the schedules that I think they also need to look at. Yes, the GSE may have done a good job, but I think more work needed to be done in looking at some of those areas in terms of more consulting with us. And on our Tobago side, we need to take responsibility for the fact that it is only when we come together that we will get it right as a majority putting forward a bill coming out of the bowels of Tobago, not out of the bowels of one party versus the other party. And when we realize that we have a bill coming out of the bowels of Tobago, where you have the majority of the Tobagonians saying this is what they want, and we are
All right.
prepared to, punish whoever is not willing to go with it, I think
All right.
Trinidad will listen, regardless of the parties in Trinidad. But we have to go back in history where we see that whatever bill was presented to the PP government, they changed it. Whatever bill is being presented to the PNM government, they have changed it. And so, where is Tobago?
All
Where
right.
is Tobago?
Okay. Martin, we run over time now, but giving you 1 minute to make your closing comments.
Well, I was just a little bit worried when Denise spoke about a bill coming out of the bowels of Tobago. I was just wondering at which end it was passing. But that being said, we have to really, as I say, get back to what are the fundamentals in terms of our way forward. In other words, what's a long-term game plan? Because I'll tell you something, Jerry. Even if you look at these bills that are before the parliament, okay, let's assume they're passed. Where does that really take Tobago in the sense of a long-term strategic plan? That's where I think Tobagoans need to focus and study in terms of where do I want to be? Where do the young people of Tobago want to be? And that's why I'm saying, Jerry, we need to have this conversation with the teenagers, those in their 20s, those in their 30s. Let's try to get a sense of what is important to them, what is relevant to them, because these bills seem to be more relevant to the politicians for their posturing and their grandstanding than it appears to be to the lives of the average Tobagonian. It's similar to the scenario where the politicians chained up the issue of let's buy back Pigeon Point because we don't want anybody else owning it. We beach basically. They chained up Tobagonians on that topic. So you spent $120 million, you bought back Pigeon Point, and how has that made the life of the ordinary Tobagonian any better? Ask yourself that question. Is your life any better for having spent $120 million to buy back Pigeon Point? And that's a question I keep asking. Let's think of the bigger picture. What's the long-term objective? And it comes back to the fundamental question: what do Tobagonians really want? It brings to mind the Calypsonian Maestro. Remember, he sang the song Trinidadians Don't Really Know What They Want? I ask myself, if Maestro were to look at this scenario now, what would his song be?
I want to give Vanos his final word on this thing because we started off in a particular way. Vanos, you have 1 minute to just say what you think is the way forward, how we could continue to try to make something happen positively on this island.
Well, I think the best way going forward is to let the 6-6 form the assembly. That's the place to start. Then the assembly can take on the responsibility through a special committee to revisit these bills and revisit the question of equality of status, hearing from Tobagonians over a 3-month period, as I said, and the provisions for self-determination in the Constitution and in the law, not in the Tobago Island Government Bill. And after we've gotten a constitutional amendment that provides Tobago with the right to set up a proper government here, we'll come back and visit the question of what kind of government we want to design here that will allow for real democracy, not the Mickey Mouse thing that we have going on in this Tobago Island Government Bill called democracy. So I think the real way forward is to have the 6 PNM members and the 6 PDP members constitute the assembly and take responsibility for advancing the cause of self-determination and equality of status. One more round. That's the way it should be done.
All right. I can't help but remember while I was in the assembly, in the early days, the hard days, we can't get pay. We can't get enough money to even pay basic salary for public servants. Dinoon was the chairman. Robinson went on to be something else. And myself, Dinoon, who else? Benedict Armstrong, and I think the clerk of the house then was Alan Richards. And we decided to call Manning and tell him, listen, we have a situation here. We need serious dire straits. What can you do to help us and to help us streamline funds that we can at least pay salaries in this place? Manina agreed to meet with us and talk. And we discussed all the problems we're having. After that, money flowed, and we decided that we're going to spend conservatively, given the situation, and put all systems in place, necessary checks and balances. We had a very good relationship after that with Madden. After all the battles and the political battles, 2 different parties, one in Tobago, one in Trinidad, we decided to put we tail between the leg and have some serious discussions, and there were some results. Why people can't do that in this day and more enlightened age? 2 parties can get together to do something for the benefit of this island.
That is called maturity, and that is what we need for the parties to get together, become mature, grow up, get together and represent Tobagonians and the wishes of Tobagonians. Stop representing yourselves and just party. It's time for us to come together. As one of the people said out there, our person commenting, we have to unite to get it right. That is what we have to do. There's no way out of this except Tobagonians come together and show our Tobagoness to Trinidad.
All right, that's a very good way to close, Denise. Thank you very much. Folks, thank you very much. Kwesi, Vanos, Martin, and Denise, of course, nice way to close it. See you again next week. We may want to do a part 2 to see what happens. Maybe some miraculous thing may happen. What do you say, Martin? Something might happen next week, right?
Well, who knows? I mean, the thing is, we always live in hope, but the point is sometimes hopes get dashed, as we saw today in the
and life have to go on. Even if hopes get dashed, life had to go on. We have to think positive. Yeah. See you next week, folks. Thanks very much again, panelists, Vanos and others. We'll see you next week, God's willing.